Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Love it when we get together with people here and learn their stories because there's something to take away for all of us. She's got an amazing story. We started last week. We're going to pick up where we left off. We've made her our diamond of a decade in education, and she spent many years as a professor at St. Cloud University, Department of Psychology, and has done a lot in a lot of years, inspiring students and starting them on a path. Her path changed along the way. And we're going to talk with Dr. Marlene DeVoe about all that. Welcome back. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Steve. And I hope you're well also.
Doing great. Doing great. I'm fascinated by your story. If I remember correctly, did you begin with a nursing career?
I did. I started out in nursing and yes, went actually back to school and was going to get more education in nursing. And then along the way, changed and decided to go into psychology because I really, really loved it. And then went on to graduate school and got my PhD in psychology at Wayne State University and did a fellowship in Philadelphia through the National Institute of Health. And then I went to St. Cloud State University from there.
I want to go back to that moment where you were in nursing and you made that decision to go in a different direction for psychology. What was that moment? Do you remember?
Well, the first moment was really when I was driving to work. And I actually still can visualize where I was when this happened. It was so, so powerful. I was ready to make a right turn by the river in St. Cloud to head towards the hospital. And I'm waiting, and all of a sudden, it was like a voice in my own head saying, it's time to go back to school. And it was like sort of scary because where was this coming from? It was obviously from me and my own self, but uh, somehow my intuition became very powerful and, kind of let me know this. Wow. And so I started thinking about it and immediately realized, yes, indeed, I do. I've always loved school. And so I went and signed up at the local Grand Valley State University within the next couple weeks to go that fall. And that was the beginning of my change into psychology.
I want to go right for what you said there because I find it very interesting. Your intuition. So we can hear things, feel things, and then you wonder, why am I hearing that? I'm not going to go back to school. It was resonating very strong with you to the point where you did take action and you went back to school.
Yes.
What made you believe that that was a moment that you needed to listen to? And that, you mentioned intuition. Was that coming
Yes.
from your intuition? And did you believe your intuition prior to that? Because a lot of us don't.
Um, well, I think earlier I told you my story where maybe I did disconnect from my feelings sometimes just to manage in life because of things that had happened. And
Sure.
that takes a while to work all that through. So I would say I probably did. I was making more logical decisions rather than how does it fit within me as a whole person. And yes, I hadn't really perhaps explored that part of myself. That's right.
I mean, you
And
could have filtered that one out like many of us do, I'm gonna block that out. I got stuff going on now, this whole message coming as I'm driving going back to school, but it seemed to make a mark on you. And how soon after you heard that voice in your head did you go back to school?
the next week, I went around to all the possible places to go back to school in the
Wow.
local, within about 50 miles from where I lived. and went for interviews and everything. And I did it very, very quickly. I responded. It was so powerful, Steve. That's what I'm saying. It was like, I suppose it was biblical, it'd be like the voice of God, because I do think sometimes, maybe this sounds terrible, but when we say God, it's that divineness almost within us that was speaking, that
Hmm.
was just somehow knew how to put everything together and what was really a better path for me.
Intuition. I want to look at that again because you coming from somebody that has studied and taught psychology for a long time, do you feel that when we are trying to come up with an answer, we have the answer? We know what the answer is. It's inside of us,
Mhm.
but all of us around us, busy lives, schedule, social media, all of that just gets in the way where you
That's
can't
right.
listen to what's inside of you. And then when you hear it, as you did, you need to trust what's coming out and pay attention to it. That this is I know when I'm right and I know when I'm wrong, and I need to listen to what's coming out of us. Do you feel that aligns with you?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, I know, even though psychology is my field, and I know that often it's been written that you shouldn't do this. But when I first meet a person, I just know, like, if they're a good person and everything.
Mm.
And if I don't pay attention to that, yes, time goes on and I'll be darned, but in a few years later, oh, yes, there it is. There it is.
Yep.
And
I
why did I pay attention originally? Because now I got
Yes.
burned.
Oh, thank you. In my journey, I've learned that everybody tells you who they are in the beginning. They're telling you who they are, but a lot of times
Yes.
we're not listening. We just meet
And
them.
you're picking that's that intuition that's just picking up the whole package at once.
Yeah, totally. And that can also come from some of the words they use, things that they say, and then you process that,
Right.
filter it through your
Exactly. Their
intuition.
gestures, their facial expressions, the tone of voice. So much is being given to you,
Hmm. And
which is being lost in the media.
yeah, and lost in the moment because of our busy schedules. Let's say you're at a networking event, whatever, party. You meet someone, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. You talk for a couple of minutes.
Right. The
You're
busy, right.
you're looking at
Exactly.
other people, got to get something to eat. When's the buffet going to close? you're not
That's
you're not
right.
fully paying attention on what's inside here and what they're providing you. And not that you always need to, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Whether you're going to see them again or never see them again, to really just absorb.
That's right. I am it's just saying this, Steve, though, I am getting a little concerned about our young people and just using their phones and not picking up all that information and learning those skills that they don't even realize they're learning very early on.
Yes.
And so it is concerning to me about that. And there is some research that it might be especially affecting young adolescent girls.
You're a billion% right about that. And even if you look at some of the stats from the DEC, this was a few months ago, that the highest segment of uh, people going through mental challenges and the highest suicide rate or somebody thinking about suicide are teenage girls. It's huge.
Yeah, yeah. And they're it's so important for them to be picking up these to read these uh, behaviors that we just discussed about how you pick it up about another person. And they're not getting that because they're on media and that's different interaction than one on one. And so they're not picking up those subtle cues of emotions, tone of voice, gestures. It's just all into a little bit more about what am I supposed to think or see?
Hmm.
What do other people expect? Rather, so they're losing that inner touch.
Yeah. And not learning or harnessing the power of what they have inside their intuition because and socialization skills. Let's talk about that. That's
Right.
missing because it's all behind a screen and keyboard.
Right. So how do you get rid of all this? Maybe it should go back to that grounding that you talked about, that where you just let go of everything else and you're just not, your mind isn't all occupied and you're not concerned about what other people think or feel about you and what
Yeah.
kind of image you're presenting to everybody. But uh, you just get to be in touch with yourself again. How to do that is perhaps the challenge of our current times.
Mm, without a doubt. And we did talk about last time how when you were that age as a teenage girl, you were in Mexico picking strawberries and learned a lot about the people of Mexico and their culture. We only skimmed the surface on that. Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, there's one little change there. The people from Mexico were coming to Michigan to help pick the crops.
Gotcha.
And they
Gotcha.
were doing it because it is actually can be very lucrative picking crops at the time they're ripe, if you're a very good picker. So they would
Hmm.
come and pick the crops, and then they would leave and go off to pick somewhere else. And but I was local in Michigan, but I too picked the crops. But they were always so much better than any of the local people. They just like maybe I would pick one container and they would pick like 10 in comparison.
Wow.
And it's like it just was baffling. How could they possibly do that? And they somehow I'm working side by side with them and on the ground, and the strawberries are very low to the ground. You have to totally connect with the earth and picking those luscious fresh strawberries that are so beautiful and
Hmm.
smell so wonderful. And I would talk to them, and then we'd have lunch all together. Well, not all together necessarily, but we'd have lunch, and I would talk with them. And so one day I asked them, my goodness, how do you pick so fast? Absolutely can't figure it out. And they said, here, we'll show you. And they showed me how to do it. It was a very special technique. I mean, they knew exactly what they were doing to make it
Wow.
happen. And like how you can't hold it in your hands and let it roll down and all kinds of various things. They knew exactly what they were doing. And so I, of course, wasn't as good as they were, but I improved probably threefold anyhow and became the best local picker
Wow.
because of them. And I just was so thankful to them. They helped me save money for going on to school.
Was there a language barrier at that time?
Well, they did speak Spanish, but and I didn't. But we could communicate enough with English that we were able to speak. And in fact, they even invited me into their home one time, or not their home, but the place they were living in, to come and have tacos with them to try their Mexican food.
Wow.
And it was absolutely delicious, of course.
What an amazing, well, you had dessert, strawberries. What an amazing time for you. What with, many teens don't get to experience where you're working, you're learning another culture, you're integrating with other people, from another from that culture, and even just forming a bond. We're helping each other there. They're helping you. Um, just must have been a wonderful experience.
It was wonderful. I felt, wow, very special. I was the only one they did this with, actually.
Hmm.
Uh, but I enjoyed their company too. So
Yeah. And
and
you
I
know,
valued them, like what they did. I maybe, that was an important piece. I really valued how good they were and their ability to know how to do this particular task.
did you back then, even as a teenager, and I ask this because of so many years in psychology, did you think about the way people thought? Not even knowing that you're doing it, but just did you have an interest in the human mind, how people present themselves, say all those kinds of things?
I think I probably always have, yes, yes, I've always, probably, yes, I would say I always liked people and finding out more about them,
Hmm.
at that level, at that time.
Use a
I,
cliche. What makes them tick?
yes, I loved finding out about them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What when you were teaching? Yeah, I want to go back. Let's say we have a beginning of a week, and you're going to start a new lesson. What are some of the things in a college level that you might begin teaching? Pick anything.
Uh, it, well, lifespan developmental psychology,
Tell
uh,
me, tell me more.
which is it's basically looking at the whole lifespan from prenatal development and infancy, uh, childhood, adolescence, young, middle, later adulthood, all the way into death and dying. So it spreads the whole lifespan, and it's kind of looking psychologically uh, in this kind of survey class at that whole lifespan. And many students have to take it, like social workers, nursing, uh,
Hmm.
pre-med students actually often take it, funeral directors take it.
Wow, really?
It's a variety. And then, of course, you have your psychology majors who will take it. So you get a wide group of students. And so that makes the classes very interesting, which I didn't think till just now, Steve. Yeah, that was part of what I loved.
Hmm.
I didn't have like just business majors or something. I had a lot of different students from different majors, as well as the psychology. And it did make the classes very interesting. And they were so interested in how it all related to their own lives and their family, friends, situations that they've experienced. And
Wow.
so it was so interesting. We all would learn just from people, talking about their own incidents or issues, and then and how it related to what we were studying.
Can you share an interesting psychological fact with us? Something that you've learned that you think, wow, it's pretty cool the way the mind works, or how we process something here and get to here. Anything?
Okay. Well, I think, but it's interesting. I've always thought to think of, I've always liked Carl Jung, and he he was a personality theorist, which he came up with a whole theory of personality development, and he felt like there were different sides of ourselves, like sensing versus thinking, and
Hmm.
I mean, sensing versus feeling, and intuition versus thinking, and how much of each side were you? And so women in general, in our society, as it was, society keeps changing. So I'm not sure if it all stays that way, but uh, more of the intuitive feeling, and men more of the sensing, thinking types. And that would help make the personalities that you would see. But his theory was that you don't stay that way. It's part of our childhood and being oriented to society and learning how to be whatever we are in that society. But then at midlife, we get an opportunity. We fulfilled most of society's obligations. Whether was on the woman's side, the childbearing, or the man's, like taking care of the family. I'm talking about the old style,
Sure.
which is when he wrote the theory. But still, these concepts exist no matter how they are within a person. So each person, we have each one of those four in us. And so some we've developed really good, and others remain undeveloped. So his theory was at midlife, it's this wonderful time that you can be more of you, be more complete, and you can explore these parts of yourself that you have not yet developed. They're there, but they're just kind of a little more raw and rough, and actually they can come out and hurt you because they're not very developed, and they go, they're the things like bang all of a sudden. You're like,
or
why did
like
I
the stuff
do that?
the stuff that's been hiding inside of you that hasn't come out
Right,
yet.
exactly. So there's this hidden stuff in you.
Interesting. If you follow astrology, which is a science, there's a thing called the second return, and it's right around, it starts when you're 27, 28, 29, 30. That's your first. If you think about a lot of impactful things that may have happened in your life, and when you're 57, 58, 59, 60, right around there, it's called your second return, where it's a rebirth. I'm not making this up. It's, documented astrologically, where when you mentioned the, midlife, the rebirth and all of that, that's what I got a vision of. Many people,
Wow.
Go in different directions. You
I
could
love
hit
that.
58 and you may, start a new job and a new career path, or you may retire, and good stuff coming that way as well. But it's essentially a big deal in astrology. So it sounds kind of similar there.
Who knows? There's but many more connections than we give credit to in this world.
I'm fascinated by all of this, and I think I shared with you, and you said you can always go back to school. I dropped out of psychology when my first semester of college, and I regret it. And yes, you're 100% right. There's time to go back. There's other things I want to do before that, though, before I dedicate the time to that. But it's still fascinating the way the mind works. To me,
Yes.
it's everything. And
Yes.
I never realized it until life's journey takes you there and you see those things and you realize, like we said before, somebody tells you who they are in the beginning. Well, I wish I realized that long ago. Maybe if I would have, had psychology training, I would have picked up on that. Marlene, it's always great talking with you. Love your stories. I gotta tell you, I feel like I'm in the field with you picking strawberries, even just based on your story. I really do.
That's wonderful, because it was such a great experience. So it could make me happier that you feel that way.
Oh, I see it. I feel it. And even just with those people from Mexico, how they, kind of took you under their wing and helped you along there. I see it. And even changing the path to go from nursing into psychology. Thanks for being our Diamond of the Decade. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll talk soon. We're coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.